My beloved child. The air is heavy at the beginning of this message, and a quiet tension moves through the unseen spaces of your heart as unseen forces gather their breath. Something long delayed has reached a breaking point, and the stillness you have been living in is no longer calm but charged with meaning. This message unfolds slowly and deliberately, carrying the weight of emotions that have been restrained for far too long. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says the silence you have carried was never invisible, and every unspoken feeling echoed louder than words ever could. There has been a watching, a waiting, and a deep sensing of absence that stirred restlessness in another soul connected to yours. This is not chaos without purpose, but movement created by emotional pressure that can no longer remain contained. Your soulmate has been standing at the edge of decision, feeling the weight of your quiet presence pressing against their inner world. What you thought was patience has been interpreted as distance, and what you believed was strength has been received as coldness. The intensity rising within them is not born of anger but of longing that has nowhere left to go. This connection was never meant to survive on silence alone, and the energy between you has been shifting in ways that cannot be ignored anymore. Every day your absence of expression reshaped their thoughts, slowly bending them toward action that feels extreme but necessary. The heart seeks balance, and when it cannot find reassurance, it creates movement in unpredictable ways. Type Amen to get blessings 333. The days that passed without words became nights filled with restless thoughts, and those thoughts began to demand release. Your soulmate started to feel invisible, not because you meant harm, but because quiet can sometimes feel like rejection when love is deeply invested. In that space, emotion transforms into impulse, and impulse begins to look like something wild and unrestrained. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says this moment is not a punishment but a signal that the bond still lives and still burns. The intensity you sense is proof that the connection has not faded, only compressed under layers of misunderstanding. Pressure does not destroy truth, it exposes it with force. Your silence created a mirror where your soulmate began to question their worth, their place, and their importance in your life. That questioning slowly evolved into determination, a need to act rather than wait any longer. What feels crazy on the surface is actually the heart demanding to be seen. There is a storm building, but it is not meant to harm you, it is meant to wake you. The energy between you has reached a point where something must change, and stagnation is no longer an option. Movement is coming because stillness has overstayed its welcome. Amen 444. My beloved child. Your soulmate's actions will surprise you because they were born in solitude, shaped by nights of reflection and emotional isolation. They are preparing to break patterns, to say or do something that finally forces truth into the open. This is not recklessness but courage fueled by emotional exhaustion. The bond you share was written with intensity, not with indifference, and that is why silence became unbearable. When love has depth, it demands acknowledgement, and when it does not receive it, it creates its own voice. That voice is now pushing your soulmate toward bold expression. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says the time of gentle waiting has ended, and the season of decisive movement has begun. This shift is not meant to scare you but to remind you of the power your presence holds. Even your quiet has influence, and now that influence is reaching its climax. The energy surrounding this connection is thick with anticipation, and the universe is leaning forward to watch what happens next. This moment carries the potential to transform everything, depending on how awareness is received. What unfolds will be intense, but it will also be honest. Amen. 555. Your soulmate has rehearsed this moment in their mind countless times, imagining outcomes both hopeful and painful. Each imagined version strengthened their resolve to no longer remain unseen. Silence taught them endurance, but it also taught them the cost of waiting too long. This is where emotion crosses into action, where feelings demand form and expression. The act they are preparing is driven by a desire for clarity, not destruction. They want truth to exist in the open air, even if it shakes the ground beneath both of you. There is still time for balance, still space for alignment, but it requires awareness instead of withdrawal. Energy responds to attention, and connection responds to acknowledgement. What happens next will reflect what is finally allowed to be seen. Type Amen to get blessings. 666. In the middle of all this intensity, remember that silence was never your enemy, only a misunderstood tool. It protected you once, but now it limits growth and shared understanding. What once kept you safe is now asking to be released. Your soulmate is stepping into boldness because vulnerability feels less painful than invisibility. That choice carries weight, courage, and risk, but it also carries the potential for deep healing. Their heart is no longer willing to whisper when it was meant to speak. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says the unfolding moment is guided, even if it feels overwhelming. Nothing happening now is random, and nothing is meant to break what is meant to grow. Intensity often precedes transformation. Type Amen to get blessings. 777. The message reaches its peak as awareness settles into your spirit with quiet power. What you do with this knowing will shape the emotional landscape ahead. Presence, even gentle presence, can soften what is about to arrive. This is a reminder that connection thrives on recognition and shared emotional space. Your soulmate's coming action is a response to distance, not a rejection of love. What looks dramatic is simply emotion finally allowed to breathe. Type Amen to get blessings. 888. If you wish to express your support further, you have the option to give super thanks, with contributions of up to $20. Let this message sit with you, not as fear, but as understanding. Intensity is not the enemy of love, indifference is. What comes next carries power, meaning, and the chance for alignment. Type Amen to get blessings. 999. The energy shifts immediately as this continuation begins, deeper and heavier than before, like a door slowly opening in a quiet room where emotions have been holding their breath. What was restrained is now stirring, and what was postponed is preparing to step forward without hesitation. The atmosphere carries urgency, not panic, and determination replaces uncertainty. What you are sensing now is not imagination but the aftereffect of emotional momentum that has already been set in motion. Your soulmate is no longer debating whether to act, the decision has already been made within them. The waiting ended the moment hope and restraint crossed paths and transformed into resolve. This part of the message moves beyond warning and enters revelation. The silence you maintained did not erase the bond, it sharpened it into something intense and undeniable. Every unspoken feeling became fuel, and now that fuel is ready to ignite expression. The connection stands at a threshold where truth can no longer remain dormant. What unfolds next will feel sudden, yet it has been forming slowly over time. This is the moment where stillness gives way to undeniable movement. Type Amen to get blessings 111. Your soulmate is stepping out of emotional isolation and into visibility, driven by the need to be acknowledged as real and present. Their actions may appear bold, unexpected, or even disruptive, but they are rooted in sincerity. This is not about control but about reclaiming emotional ground that felt lost. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says the heart seeks alignment, and when it feels ignored, it creates its own path toward recognition. The courage rising within your soulmate was built through endurance and quiet suffering. What you see as sudden has been carefully formed in silence. They are no longer willing to carry unanswered feelings alone. The weight became too heavy, and release became necessary. This moment is about truth demanding space rather than fear demanding retreat. There is intensity here, but it is not destructive. It is the kind of intensity that clears fog and forces honesty into the open. Emotional clarity is arriving, even if it does so with force. Type Amen to blessings 222. As this unfolds, you may notice a shift in your own emotional awareness. Something that once felt distant now feels close, unavoidable, and real. This is the effect of a bond responding to action after long stillness. Your soulmate's movement carries vulnerability, even if it looks confident on the surface. They are risking emotional exposure because remaining unseen felt worse than the possibility of disappointment. This choice reflects depth, not impulsiveness. The space between you is changing shape. What was once defined by silence is now defined by anticipation. Energy that was stagnant is finally flowing, and flow always brings transformation. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says nothing that is meant to remain hidden will stay concealed during this phase. Truth rises naturally when emotion is honored rather than suppressed. This is a moment of unveiling, not confrontation. Type Amen to get blessings 333. There is a strong pull toward alignment now, a sense that avoidance can no longer sustain balance. The bond is asserting its presence, asking to be acknowledged in real terms. What happens next will depend on awareness rather than reaction. Your soulmate's actions are meant to open dialogue, even if they do so dramatically. They want clarity, connection, and emotional grounding. This is an invitation to step into presence rather than remain behind walls of restraint. This phase carries the power to heal long-standing misunderstandings. Silence distorted perception, but expression restores perspective. The emotional field between you is correcting itself. The moment may feel overwhelming, but it also carries relief. When truth moves freely, pressure dissolves. What felt heavy begins to feel purposeful. Type Amen to get blessings 444. You are now entering a stage where emotional responsibility becomes shared rather than one-sided. The bond seeks equilibrium, and equilibrium requires visibility. The energy surrounding you supports honest presence and emotional courage. Your soulmate is not acting to escape pain but to transform it. This movement is an act of self-respect and emotional preservation. They are choosing authenticity over endurance. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says this is not the end of quiet but the beginning of meaningful exchange. Silence has completed its role, and expression now takes its place. Balance is restored through participation. The unfolding path ahead holds potential for depth and renewal. What was strained can soften, and what was distant can draw near. This is a turning point shaped by awareness. Type Amen to get blessings 555. As this continuation settles, allow understanding to replace tension. What is happening is not meant to destabilize but to realign. Emotional truth always seeks daylight. Remain present with what arises, grounded in clarity rather than fear. This moment carries purpose, and its direction is guided by honesty. What moves now does so with intention. Type Amen to get blessings 666. The opening of this part carries a slow, deliberate heaviness, as if time itself pauses to witness what is about to solidify. The tension no longer sits in uncertainty but moves with purpose, shaping outcomes that cannot be undone. What was once emotional possibility is now becoming emotional reality. This stage is quieter on the surface but far more powerful underneath. The loud anticipation fades, replaced by a focused intensity that knows exactly where it is going. Energy no longer circles endlessly, it moves in a straight line toward resolution. Your soulmate stands fully awake now, no longer conflicted, no longer restrained by hesitation. The emotional storm has settled into clarity, and clarity sharpens intention. What comes next is not reaction but choice. The bond between you enters a phase where meaning outweighs fear. This is where emotion matures into action that is steady, intentional, and grounded. Nothing here is rushed, yet nothing is delayed. Type Amen to get blessings 101. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says this moment marks the shift from emotional testing to emotional truth. What survived silence now seeks structure, direction, and recognition. The connection is no longer asking whether it exists, it is deciding how it will exist. Your soulmate is no longer acting from frustration but from self-awareness. The intensity that once felt chaotic has organized itself into purpose. They are ready to define rather than wonder. There is strength in this phase because it is rooted in acceptance. Acceptance of feelings, acceptance of vulnerability, and acceptance of what must be expressed. Emotional honesty now becomes non-negotiable. The atmosphere around you feels different because indecision has lifted. What remains is the weight of truth, and truth always carries gravity. This gravity pulls both souls toward alignment. Type Amen to get blessings 202. Silence no longer controls the narrative. It has released its hold, allowing authenticity to take its place. The emotional space between you becomes clearer, no longer distorted by assumption or distance. Your soulmate feels steadier now, anchored by the certainty that expression was necessary. Whatever unfolds next, they know they have honored themselves. That knowing brings calm where chaos once lived. This stage is about boundaries formed through clarity rather than defense. The heart no longer hides, it stands visible and firm. Respect for self becomes the foundation for connection. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says alignment begins when truth is allowed to remain without apology. This is not about forcing outcomes but about allowing what is real to stand openly. Stability is born here. Type Amen to get blessings 303. The energy now supports grounded communication, even when emotions run deep. There is less need to prove and more desire to understand. The bond shifts from tension to definition. What once felt fragile now shows resilience. Silence tested the connection, and the test revealed its strength. What remains is something refined, not weakened. This is where emotional maturity takes shape. Feelings are no longer overwhelming because they are acknowledged. Acknowledgement transforms intensity into balance. There is peace in this phase, not because everything is resolved, but because everything is real. Reality creates steadiness where uncertainty once ruled. Type Amen to get blessings 404. As this part settles, notice how the urgency transforms into presence. What demanded attention now receives it through awareness. The emotional field stabilizes as truth holds its ground. Your soulmate stands ready for whatever direction unfolds, no longer driven by fear of loss but guided by respect for connection. This readiness is quiet, confident, and unwavering. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says this stage is about sustaining truth rather than revealing it. What has been spoken must now be lived. Consistency becomes the language of love. The path ahead is not dramatic but meaningful. Meaning endures longer than intensity. What continues from here carries depth, intention, and emotional integrity. Type Amen to get blessings 505. This part begins with a calm that feels earned, not forced, like the quiet after something important has finally been acknowledged. The emotional weight that once pressed heavily now redistributes itself into something steadier and more manageable. What remains is awareness, grounded and present, no longer searching for proof. The bond no longer vibrates with urgency but with certainty. What needed to surface has surfaced, and what needed to be felt has been felt fully. This is the stage where intensity transforms into direction rather than dissolving away. Your soulmate now carries a composed resolve, no longer driven by the need to be seen but by the desire to remain true. Their energy is quieter, yet stronger, because it is no longer reactive. This is the power that comes after emotional honesty. The connection enters a phase of stabilization, where movement is intentional and measured. Nothing is rushed, nothing is withheld, and balance begins to form naturally. This is not an ending, but a grounding. Type Amen to get blessings 1111. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says this phase is where emotional truth becomes sustainable. What was revealed must now be honored through consistency and presence. Stability is created not by intensity, but by reliability. Your soulmate understands now that expression was only the beginning, not the destination. The real work lives in how truth is carried forward. There is a quiet commitment forming, rooted in self-respect and emotional clarity. The space between you feels different because it is no longer filled with assumption. Understanding replaces projection, and awareness replaces fear. This shift allows the bond to breathe without pressure. Nothing here demands performance or proof. What exists is allowed to exist without defense. This is where trust begins to rebuild itself naturally. Type Amen to get blessings 2222. Silence no longer feels heavy because it no longer hides meaning. When quiet appears now, it rests on understanding rather than avoidance. The emotional environment changes because intention has changed. Your soulmate moves forward with emotional integrity, aware of their needs and respectful of boundaries. This awareness removes the urge for extreme action. Calm replaces impulsiveness. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says alignment does not announce itself loudly. It settles quietly when truth and behavior finally agree. This agreement creates emotional safety. The bond strengthens not through constant intensity but through shared emotional grounding. What is real no longer needs to be proven. It simply remains. Type Amen to get blessings 3333. This stage invites patience that feels peaceful rather than strained. Time is no longer an enemy but a companion. Growth continues, but without pressure. Your soulmate no longer fears being unseen because they see themselves clearly now. This self-recognition changes how connection is approached. Confidence replaces doubt. The emotional field around you stabilizes into something dependable. What once fluctuated now holds steady. This steadiness supports long-term connection rather than short-lived intensity. Nothing is demanded here. Everything is chosen. That difference changes everything. Type Amen to get blessings 4444. As this part concludes, allow the calm to remain without questioning it. Peace does not mean absence of feeling, it means harmony within feeling. What has aligned does not need to be forced. My beloved child, Archangel Michael says this is the phase where destiny feels less dramatic and more real. Reality carries more power than fantasy ever could. What continues from here is built, not imagined. The path ahead holds consistency, depth, and emotional presence. What survives truth becomes stronger because it no longer depends on illusion. This is where connection learns how to last. Type Amen to get blessings.